Hello and welcome to News9 Mediaverse. My name is Brijesh Pandey. It's been over 4 months since violence hit the Manipur state. And now, today, the police have issued a detailed list of the damage caused by violence since May 3rd. As many as 175 people have been killed, 32 more are missing, and over 1,108 have been injured. 96 bodies are still unclaimed in hospital mortuaries, and over 9,000 cases have been registered and 300 people have been arrested. Although 4,786 houses were set on fire and 386 religious structures vandalized, barely 1,359 of the looted firearms and 15,050 ammunitions have been recovered. Is this why the state is still struggling to return to normalcy? Before we get into the debate, let's hear IGP IK Moiwa to find out what these numbers tells us about the situation in Manipur, and then we will go to our panel of experts, Rami Niranjan Desai, author and scholar, Northeast Region, Professor Prasenjit Bishwas, Professor of Philosophy, Northeastern Hill University, and Suhas Chakma, Director, Rights and Risk Analysis Group. But first, let's listen into the sound bites of IGP Manipur, and then we will start this discussion.
In this very challenging situation and times that the state of Manipur is in, we can also reassure the public of what all the police department, along with the CAPF, that is the BSF, the CRPF, the Assam Rifle, and even the army, and along with the cooperation of the various public also, and also the civil administration is trying and round the clock and trying to bring some form of normalcy and a way back to a peaceful kind of a situation. So at the same time, we want to give some statistics about the various things that have occurred so far. That is, regarding death, 175, and injured 1,108, missing 32, arson case 5,172. This includes like sometimes one whole village is burned, then each house will be considered a case of arson, and accordingly also sometimes, now though we have amalgamated them, each cases of house burning is considered a separate FIR, and that's how we initially had a lot of FIR also. And then regarding the houses that are burned is 4,786. We combined together with the religious structure, that is 386, out of which 254 churches and 132 temples were vandalized or affected by arson. Regarding the arms and ammunition that were lost, we have recovered 1,329 arms, 15,050 ammunitions, and 400 bombs. We have bound down under preventive arrest 37,286 persons during this entire crisis. Right now, the convoy movement is moving smoothly on National Highway 37, and as just briefed by our IG Zone 3 Nishit, National Highway 2 also has been opened from today.
It has been moving for a few days.
It has been moving gradually from few days before also, but today there is the volume has increased, and we have destroyed 360 bunkers. And as per the latest inputs from IG Zone 2 Kabib, today the various barricades that were there from Hokak Chau Ikai to Kangwai Those all have been removed, and we'll be sharing you the photographs of the completely cleared, smooth roads that was taken today. We'll be sharing with you. So those barricades were an issue, in the last week and all those things, but somehow with the initiative of the SP Bishnupur and under the guidance of the concerned IGP and the cooperation of all the security forces deployed there, all the barricades has been removed from Hokakchao Ikai to Kangba. This is the update that we want to give. So these are all the things that we want to give as update for today.
We have I would like to highlight that we have a deployment of a paramilitary CAPF at Haraothel, Kotrud, Kharab Thadoi, then Kadangban, Bethel, and similarly up to Singda, we have an axis, we have a deployment, and I personally went and interacted with the security forces and the civilian on the valley side and also the hillside when they interacted. Whatever the shortcomings we found, and we briefed them, and some of the measures we have suggested to the security personnel also to what any miscreant coming here across any side they are moving, there should no armed miscreant should try to vitiate the peaceful atmosphere. So we hope that things will definitely improve as our IG officer has said. We are working further also on this direction.
So what is extremely interesting right now is, and I would like to tell our viewers that my colleague Kartikeya Sharma has joined us. Apart from Kartikeya, Professor Prasenjit Biswas, who is Professor of Philosophy, Northeastern Hill University, have joined us. Sir, welcome to News9 Live. And also Suhas Chakma, Director, Rights and Risk Analysis Group, have joined us. Kartikeya, first I'll come to you and then I'll go to Professor Prasenjit Biswas and then to Mr. Suhas. For the first time, Kartikeya, police have come up with the real figures, because earlier there were a lot of claims and counter claims about how many people have been killed, how many churches have been vandalized, how many people have been injured. What do these figures tell you? 175 people killed and counting. Thousands of people injured. And then, more than 98, more than 96 or 100, unclaimed dead bodies. What do these stats tell you? Kartikeya.
There are a couple of things. I think what Bharatiya Janata Party's government, BJP's government in Manipur is trying to do, or what the administration is trying to do, is setting the record straight. When we said you hold a press conference, what do? You hold the record straight. Now people will not be able to build narratives that these many people have been killed, these many weapons have been taken away, these many weapons have come back. They have set the record straight. This is what has happened. This is the entirety of destruction. This is the cache of the weapons taken away from the militants. This is the cache of the weapons which is taken away from the administration. This is the casualty list. So BJP is trying to set the record straight on Manipur, and for them to hold this press conference is of immense importance. Generally, I would have assumed that this press conference would have taken place on a daily basis. It didn't take place on a daily basis for whatsoever reason which the state government thought is correct. So I'm not going to get into that. But for the state government to come out with this detail is trying to set certain records straight that, boss, this has happened. Any debate, any conversation will be around these factual parameters only. What was happening in the information theatre of Manipur, or I would say larger rubric of narratives, was that people were coming out with inflated numbers. Everything was inflated, everything was a hyperbole, everything was more than more, and everything was contested by communities across. Every ethnic community would have a different take. So they are trying to put the record straight. I don't know how much it is going to help in context of law and order, how much it is going to help in context of stabilizing the situation. But when you come out with the facts, at least there is an element of transparency. I welcome that. I would say it should happen more frequently in terms of police briefing, in terms of media briefing. It's a good thing to happen.
It's good thing to happen. Professor Prasenjit Biswas, if you go into the figures of dead, I mean, people know that yes, 175 people have died and 101,108 have been injured. But if you also go into the details, like 5,172 arson cases reported and 386 religious structures, 254 churches and 132 temples were vandalized. Because this was also very hotly contested figures, people saying that less number of temples have been destroyed and more number of churches have been burned, and various narratives were being built around this. How do you respond to these figures, Professor? Do they convey the kind of terror Manipur has been living in for the last 4 months plus?
Yes, Brijesh ji, you are very, very right in saying that the narratives will be much more focused now, and the hell that Manipur has lived through in last 5 months is partly reflected, in these figures, because figures do not tell you everything. The human tragedy, the kind of cruelty, the logic of retaliation, the total absence of the state from preventing violence, all these are, something that is latent in these statistics. So therefore, these statistics have to be read in a certain context. The context is that probably the government has ensured now that there is a certain kind of a ceasefire. There is a certain lull in the process of conducting violent activities by any of the sides. Very recently, Chief Minister has said it's not a clash but a conflict. And conflict will take some more time to be resolved. Now, you see, if it is a conflict, and if there are these statistics that bear the mark and the intensity of the conflict that Manipur has gone into, then these figures actually do not show that it's going to stop so soon. Rather every part of this figure tell us a story, and the story will have a counter narrative. The story will have a plot and a counter plot, and the plotters are very much still active. They have to be disengaged, and the conflict needs to be de-escalated. So the de-escalation process may be facilitated by presenting a mirror before everyone, by showing them the goriness, the tragedy of the conflict that it has left the mark of. But if that can desist people from engaging into more and more conflict, if that can create a kind of restraint on the minds and hearts of people, and people start looking at each other not as enemies, but as how one side has victimized the other side, and how every side should stand for the victims, and try to bring back the semblance of peace, semblance of humanitarian work. The bodies that are lying unclaimed, that's a major concern as far as I'm concerned. Government has to find out to whom these bodies belong to, the identity of the people.
Exactly.
If these bodies are badly mutilated, then it will be very difficult to have an identity. So the work of identification, and then the work of compensating people who have lost everything because of violence, has to be started, in a very systematic manner, in a systemic manner, so that those who have suffered arson, and those who have suffered death, those who have suffered any other kind of displacement, all these can be tied in a single thread, and a package can be worked out which is deliverable. Okay. I think this is what would be my response to this.
Okay. Mr. Suhas, welcome to News9 Mediaverse. There are two interesting things, as the professor was talking about. I'm coming to you, Kartikeya. The professor was talking about, one was this unclaimed bodies, because there was a lot of furor raised over it. There was a lot of protest about, giving them a burial, and it led to protest to a level where, the Home Ministry had to intervene, meet the warring faction. A and B, the report also says, the press conference also says that security barricades from Fauga Chao Ikhai in Bishnupur district to Kangwai in Chura Chandpur district have been removed. What do you make of these 2 points, How important is this removal of security barricades, and what exactly do they denote? And B, what about those unclaimed bodies? Because there were a lot of talk about, about that them being foreign fighters was also doing the round.
Well, I think the first issue is these figures are not new. And when the government of Manipur had submitted its report, I think on 10th of July before the Supreme Court, at that point of time, they had already mentioned that 142 people have been killed, and there were these 96 or 90 or unclaimed bodies. I think what we missed from the entire report is that I think the government has given the statistics about everything except one of the most critical issues, that the number of bullets which were lost, and that's over 5 lakhs. So even these figures have already been presented, some form or the other, and some of which are updated before the Supreme Court. I think we have to remember one, these are not new figures. These figures have already been presented before the court, they have been reported, they have just been updated in that sense. So the figures are not going to change the narrative in this way or that way. I think that's the way we have to see the removal of the, the barricades. Of course, I mean, there is certain amount of fatigue. So that's why, people don't want to engage in violence on a regular basis. I think what we have to bear in mind, it's much more than just a clash which the chief minister, would like to refer to. At the end of the day, this is about tough war, territorial war. And if you had looked at the report of the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, that certain number of villages have been wrongly classified in 2000 census as areas falling under the valley, basically on the non-tribal areas, rather than in the valley. You could see that people are still talking about autonomy. People talk about separation. We dislike, or however way we want to change the narrative. I think one fact has taken place, that's the division of Manipur. De facto division of Manipur because of the administration of law and order or enforcement of law and order by different type of security forces, the movement of population, the entire transfer of population, then linked with it, what is the resolution? I don't think it's something you can rewrite it again. Once people have fled, so you can remove these, barricades gradually, but I don't think people will, in the coming months, will gather the courage to go back, say, Métis, go back into the hill areas or the hill people. So I don't think it changes in any manner.
Okay. Yeah, Kartikeya, you were saying something.
You see, I couldn't hear Suhasi. I wish I was able to hear him. But I want to go back to the data which is there. Let's focus on the data. What does data tell us? It says that 175 people killed, 1,108 injured, and 32 are missing. If you recall, Brijesh, it says that 4,786 houses were set on fire and 386 religious structures were vandalized. When we started this conversation, there used to be inputs that only the religious structures of a particular community has been destroyed.
This was the question which I asked, Professor.
254 churches and 132 temples were destroyed during the conflict. So it tells us one thing. It tells us one thing, that the clashes took place from both the sides. Both of them were the perpetrators. Both of them were the victims at the same time. Secondly, 5,172 arson cases have been registered. Of the weapons that have been lost, 1,359 firearms and 15,050 ammunition were recovered. I am not right now going to get into the detail of what has been lost, because we discussed it yesterday. Imagine 15,000 ammunition has been recovered. 15,000. And 1,359 firearms. I am not going to get into this debate whether it's 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 10%. I am not going to get into it. I am just going to go by the data which has been provided. If this is what is being recovered, I suppose what has been stolen, that's the number's second part. And then 79 of the bodies have been claimed while 96 remains unclaimed. in Imphal, 28 and 26 bodies have been kept respectively. 42 are Chura, Chandpur. 9,332 cases have been registered. 325 people were arrested. You know, this is something, it's like a wake-up call to the people sitting in Delhi and other parts of the country to understand the horrific ordeal which Manipuris underwent. Because Manipuris suffered. Imagine these many firearms in multiplication were missing, these many came back. Imagine in a small state like Manipur, more than 184 temples destroyed and more than 254 churches destroyed. Look at the barbarity of the action. So in a way, when the government is trying to put the facts to counter the narrative, but narrative in itself or the fact in itself is so revealing, it tells you the depth, the gravity of the violence which took place. It just tells you how deep was the violence, how
absolutely. We have also been joined.
It could not be combated. Imagine in a state like Manipur, 254 churches and 184 temples destroyed.
132, Kartikeya. Yeah, I'm also joined by Rami Niranjan Desai, author and scholar of Northeast region. Rami, welcome to News9 Live. The IGP of Manipur today held a press conference, and I think officially, because they have submitted a report in the Supreme Court, Rami, where they have given the details and all. But I think today officially for the first time, the extent of damage which Manipur has suffered till now has been put on record. For the first time, we know that this many people have died, these many religious places have been burned, these many missing, and so on and so forth. What do these stats tell us, in terms of damage which has been caused to the state of Manipur by this violence, which is now 4 months plus?
Good evening, Brijesh. Good evening, Kartikeya. Brijesh, I've been on ground zero. I've been to the Kuki areas. I've been to the valley, and of course, this has taken a toll on everybody. I don't think we need to look deeper into the stats. I think what's happened is that even though the stats had been given in to the Supreme Court earlier on, this is an important move because this makes it public. This makes it accessible to the common man. It also makes it accessible to anybody wanting to use statistics easily. Because like Kartikeya correctly said, that numbers were being misused, and obviously we've seen some sort of interest in this area in manipulating this conflict. External agencies are involved, and they've been trying to put a religious lens on it, wherein I think all of us have been from day one saying that this is a multi-layered problem, this is a historical legacy issue, so on and so forth. But this is not predominantly a religious issue, even though people had been trying to do that. So I think putting out these statistics publicly is a very important move, and this sort of transparency was needed. Having said that, the level, forget about the numbers, I mean, when the Kuki Naga clashes happened, there were 700 people that died, I think it wouldn't be appropriate to, say that, these numbers say something more than if they were 50% less, because I think the fact of the matter is that Manipur is impacted. The people of Manipur have lost trust with each other, and that is very sad. What I noticed when I was on ground is the fact that we talk about disarmament, and of course, that is a solution, that we bring these weapons back. But that's not really going to happen unless there are trust building and confidence building exercises between communities. And what I noticed was that there is a lack of trust at this point. So on what basis are we going to be able to ask citizens of the state to be able to surrender these weapons? I think as much as we'd like this to happen, the arms and ammunition to come back and not be floating around in civil society, I think there are a few steps before that, and that is what we need to focus on. Of course, there are, the security forces are doing what they can, to bring these weapons back. But, I think eventually, people are using it as self-protection and using it until they gain some amount of trust with each other. I have seen the houses that have been burned down, and it's very sad because even if this trust is built, where do people go? Their entire lives have been lost, and this is on both sides of the communities, not one. So I think we have a long road ahead of us. Instead of focusing on exactly what the statistics tell us, I think it's time now we need to focus that now that we have these statistics, how are we going to fix the situation? Because this is the number that we have in front of us. These are the people that need to be rehabilitated. Winters is going to come. This is going to be a cold winter for a lot of people, a cold Christmas for a lot of people, a cold Diwali for a lot of people. So I think it was very heartbreaking to see that, and I think that's what we need to now focus on is the way ahead.
Ravi, since you've been on the ground, do you see a sense of fatigue setting in? Or is it like, business as usual
Brijesh.
as far as the violence? I'm coming to you, Kartikeya. It's like, business as usual as far as the violence is gone. Because, the stats, the reason why we chose to do the story.
That's the question. Actually, that's the question I wanted to ask.
Quite right. There is a fatigue. And
that's the question I wanted to ask, actually, Brijesh, because Rami was there for 4 days. I actually wanted to.
Yeah, Rami, please go ahead.
Absolutely, of course there is.
Am I audible to you?
All of us said this right at the outset also that, this kind of conflict cannot last forever. And, people are eventually going to get tired because they've seen 6-7 years of industry. They've seen 6-7 years of peace. So, of course, this sort of leveling of tempers is going to happen. However, the fact of the matter is that, like I said, that, this has emanated into something bigger, which is huge trust deficit within the people of Manipur, which is very sad to see because it's been such a pluralistic society and people have lived together, and now there is a division. Having said that, yes, there is business has started. There is a sense of normalcy, and I think we must also appreciate the fact that wherein we say that incidents are still happening. There is no way of denying that there are incidents that are still occurring ever so often, but the number of incidents have come down. The level of the conflict has come down, and we must focus on that. We must appreciate that, and that is bringing in a sense of normalcy. Whether it's Imphal, whether it's the outskirts. I have seen the markets, and the markets are running, but right next to the markets you'll have refugee camps. And when you go into these refugee camps, the state of these camps are very sad because there are children and there are women, and the government is providing them with basic necessities, but a refugee camp is a refugee camp. How long are they going to live there? Because they have nothing to go back to. I have seen houses where there isn't the structure that is left. You can only see an outline of the foundation. So what are they going to build?
It seems that there is some issue with Rami's connection. Professor, I'll come to you. You heard Rami, who has come from the ground, and Kartikeya, then I'll come to you. I'll come to you, Kartikeya. But the professor, you heard her. That there could be a decree.
Brijesh, Brijesh, I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, Kartikeya, I heard you, but I think there's some issue. There is some issue with.
I wanted to ask a question. If Rami comes back, you do ask that question to her.
I can hear you.
Yeah, the question which I wanted to ask was, Rami, can you hear me?
Yes, I can,
okay.
Kartikeya.
So the Rami Kartikeya, the question which I wanted to ask you was, thank you. I'm joining you from Bangalore today. Brijesh is alone in the newsroom, so he's doing the hard hitting. I have a question for you. I read the articles, your interviews there. I wanted to know one thing from you. When you were there in Manipur, what did you make out for the development which took place 6 days before you went there, where women of particular community wanted to go back to their houses? So 3 to 4 days, you had lot of commotions in various villages in Imphal, where they wanted to, I will not use the word reoccupy, to go back and settle into where they had come from. So has that dissipated, and why did it happen suddenly? Why did it create so much of commotion? Is there some sort of an unrest within the valley that, people want to go back to their homes, and, because of security grid in place, their movement is restricted by other paramilitary forces? Can you please elaborate on that?
Kartikeya, of course, everybody wants to go back home, and I think what has happened is this prolonged emotional process that they've had to go through in terms of the conflict. We are running into the 4th month now. It's become very tiring and very frustrating for people, especially for women and children, because they've been impacted adversely by this conflict. Basic necessities and your basic standard of life has been put under a certain amount of scrutiny. And I think that is what happened, is that number one, that it was very important for them to feel some sense of normalcy, that they could go back and see their homes. And, I see that kind of sentiment everywhere across Manipur. It's not limited to one community. Everybody wants to go back home. Number two, everybody in Manipur, irrespective of the community, is so close to their land, is so close to, it's something that we can't understand. Being in Delhi, we are almost like settlers in Delhi. We've come from all over the country. I don't think we can entirely understand this. But for the Manipuris, their land is predominantly their main attachment to this world. And, therefore, this sort of division wherein you cannot go, there are buffer zones, you cannot cross, has had emotional impact on them. And therefore, there is this need arising wherein you want to be able to travel and be a part of the state the way you were before. And that possibly was the reason for that skirmish that we saw. But overall, Kartikeya, to answer your question, the fact remains that we are limping back to normalcy. There is a rate of, the kind of incidents that we've seen is falling. People are getting tired of being in this situation. But the one thing that I have noticed that I didn't notice in the previous, or, it's something that I don't think came up in the previous conflicts that I've seen in the region, is the fact that this time people are very keen to find a sensible common place, wherein the solution is not something that brings artificial peace, it's something that brings long-term peace. And I think that is what people are sure of. And I also see that people are willing to come, and have some amount of dialogue. Again, that will be very slow. It's not going to happen overnight. And also the stakeholders to identify are going to be very difficult, because from both sides there are many, many groups that are representing the populations, the communities. But once that is done, I think what everybody is keen on is to have a dialogue, find some amount of commonplace wherein they can bring about some sort of long-lasting solution and not a short-sighted solution, which will only give them artificial peace. Because I think one thing that was made very clear to me is a situation like this should never come up again. And that responsibility lies with everybody, irrespective of the community that they belong to. And I think that responsibility and sense of responsibility has come in. And, I think we have to show great respect for the people of Manipur, because their resilience has been incredible. They're still wanting to, talk and to be able to relay their opinions and be able to talk about peace, to be able to talk about going back to their homes. But like I've said many times before, I think, one of the indicators that we are in a good place will be when all the displaced populations can go back to their homes safely. And that is not going to just happen by saying that,
yes, Mr. Chakma, I'm coming to you. Yeah, please carry on. Please finish, Rami.
And they're going to go there. I think that will also require some creative solutions, which, was discussed at length in Manipur.
Okay, Rami, I know that you have to go somewhere, so thank you so much for giving your precious time to News9 Live. We will also be joined by Group Captain B. Nandakumar Sharma. But yeah, Mr. Chakma, you raised your hand. You wanted to make a point. Please go ahead.
No, I think the statistics in a way, while welcoming, which we should welcome as statement of facts. I think the way we take as if, nothing has happened, and the way we normalize certain things as if no one is responsible for the same. And we also take a naive approach towards solution just because people are suffering from fatigue. Of course, everybody wants to move in normalcy, and nobody wants to live in a situation where you are displaced in your own homes or in your own territories. I think I just wanted to caution one particular point, is that if we take that this is a natural way where people want peace, people are becoming sensible, then of course, again, we will be, misconstrued, and we will at certain stage feel that I think we have misread the situation. The ground situation are to be looked at into two ways. One is, I think, whatever has happened, where the entire state was all destroyed, the government stood as a mute witness, there shall not be any accountability whatsoever. That's one aspect. Whether how that assuages the sentiments of the people, it's one issue. The other issue we have to look at it. I think that's where the question of Kartikeya had come up. We cannot ignore the fact when people from certain communities want to move either this way or that way, people still see those movement of population, even if it is returning to their own homes, owned by them, it is actually still seen as something part of the claim over territories. And that is where, I think conflict may stop, the killings may stop, the buses will run, but please remember one thing. If you believe that there is a solution to contesting claim over land, territories, which we are not possible, this is possibly not even the time to talk about it. As I had said many a times, that you have to give a gestation period to 6 months to 1 year. But I will say only one thing. The moment you start talking about solution acceptable to both sides, where both sides should be unhappy, I think you will see another resurgence of violence. The day you talk about some kind of autonomy for the Kukis and some kind of land rights for the natives in the hills, I can guarantee you one thing, that, we will be shocked that, everybody says this should not come again. But if you look at the Northeast, if you have seen the riots in Bodolan areas, you have seen in the Dimasa hill areas, you have seen between the Ravas and the Garos in Assam, you have seen the movement against the permanent residence certificates in Arunachal Pradesh across the world. I think what we have to remember one thing is, the tribalism is so strong, connected with the land and territory, that if more shocking violence take place, if tomorrow Manipur even decides to hold talks with the Kukis on the grant of autonomy, not separation, grant of autonomy within the constitutional.
Okay.
Within, you will see the different story altogether.
Okay. I'm also joined by B. Nandakumar Sharma ji. I'll come to you in a bit, but I want to go to Professor Prasenjit Biswas and ask him this question. As has been articulated by Mr. Chakma. Professor Biswas, do you feel that a bit of giving up on the ardent stand by the Kukis, and also giving up certain land rights to Maitis in the hill, this will necessitate, facilitate quick recovery to the kind of violence which you are seeing, and see lessening of violence?
Land is a complicated issue actually. Right now it is under 5th schedule and under 371C. So we have to look at the constitutional provisions. I don't think constitutional provisions are defective at all. Rather, they are time tested. Now, hill people are to be protected by giving them land rights exclusively in terms of their agricultural practices, in terms of their cultural practices. I don't think that should be interfered with at all. Now, as far as land rights to be given to Meitei community is concerned, they are already expanding in the valley areas, in the foothill areas. So they can expand. They have enough land in their hand. Now, there is no cadastral survey, I have already mentioned. So let there be a proper survey of land. Classified land can be given to the people who require them. And there could be a justice done to every side. Right now, whatever is the constitutional arrangement, that needs to be strengthened in order to ensure peace with justice. A little more autonomy needs to be given without separating people, without alienating them from each other, without disintegrating the state. So these concrete political proposals have to be really worked on in order to ensure peace with justice. All right?
Okay, but in the middle of all these press conferences and stats which have come out, which have kind to, for the first time, an effort by the state to come clean with the numbers, though they may not reflect the brutal reality which is on the ground. Once more, Assam Rifle has come into picture. Manipur Congress President Kesham Meghchandra has once again raised a demand that the BJP government should send back, the state BJP government should send back Assam Rifles back to from where they came. And they said, he claimed that, that Assam Rifles is trying to kill innocent. Now, these are, as we have discussed several times, these are very preposterous claims which have been made by Kesham Meghchandra. And, first listen into what Kesham Meghchandra has to say. And then I'll go to, Nandakumar Sharma ji to ask, is it fair on part of him to ask for, ask Assam Rifles to be returned back to the barracks?
Serious. The government should have taken the cabinet decision to withdraw the Assam Rifle from the entire Manipur, and the resolution of the cabinet should be sent to the central government for immediate withdrawal of the Assam Rifle from the entire state of Manipur. So they are not taking any serious action by the state government. That is why the recent incidents, Assam Rifles team killing the innocent peoples in Palen and other places, many incidents have happened in Manipur by the Assam Rifle. But the state government is silently spectator, and there is no any actions against these Assam Rifle.
Well, this was the statement of of Manipur Congress President. We at News9 holds a completely contrary view. There's no doubt about whatsoever about the impartiality, the integrity and the valor of Assam Rifle. But it is very strange. It's strange for the reason that basically just to understand what makes Assam Rifle so bad for one community and so good for one community. I mean, in my decades of journalism or reporting, I've never seen a claim as contrast as this when it comes to one single entity. Kartikeya, I'm coming to you. Kartikeya, you're saying something.
Thank you so much, Brijesh, for accommodating me again. I'm been breaking your the flow again and again. It's just that one thing I would like to say on behalf of News9, we don't take responsibility for what this gentleman has said. We are showing you to just put a point across that this competitiveness in terms of security forces, and again questioning the loyalty of either Manipur police or Assam Rifle to the Union of India or the state of Manipur is not in the national security interest of this country. News9 does not identify with this view, but it has put it on record to show that these views are unfair to the security agencies who are doing their job, because security agencies are not made from stone. They are made of people. Even Manipur police and Assam police are made of people, and for them and for any politician to say this is required, they are required and they are not required is completely incorrect. I think the administration should come strongly on such words. I think either the leadership should reprimand him, whether it's from BJP or the Congress party. We criticize both. Thank you, Brijesh.
Mr. Nandakumar Sharma ji, how do you react to this statement? Because it seems like when it comes to Assam Rifle, be it BJP, Congress, one faction always unites, to cast doubt on them.
Yes, I would not like to comment on any political parties because I'll be seen as siding towards one political side. However, the fact on the ground is the trust of Assam Rifle is quite losing by the Meitei communities, and you would have seen in your programs or many shows that Meitei have been, the Meitei, especially the Maira Paibis and the Meitei community, they have been saying that the Assam Rifle is showing some sort of bias or disparity while dispersing the crowd or while handling the violence during this 4 months long crisis. So, in fact, their morale towards the Assam Rifles is very low as of now. So, to bring their morale up. So time being, Assam Rifle may be replaced with some other forces. When the situation comes to normal, then it can be brought back based on the political or situational assessment at that time. However, even the Meitei communities, they are not blaming the whole Assam Rifle. It is some particular brigade or this thing, like 737 sector Assam Rifle or 9, something. Few of them are seen biased towards the Kuki community. They are not saying the complete Assam Rifle as a whole. So please do not take as a complete this thing against the Assam Rifle. It's towards certain sectors of the Assam Rifles. So, in my opinion, the public opinion is that the Assam Rifle replacement would bring the public
But Mr.
confidence towards
Nandakumar
the...
Sharma ji, you have been an army man yourself. You're from the forces. Do you see these kind of demands any sort of feasible? It's like, is the crowd going to decide which forces are going to be there or not? Something like that?
Yeah,
I mean, because Indian Army, sir, sorry for interjecting. Indian Army, the spare corps have released footages of how their personals are stopped by Mira Paibis. I mean, it puts it in direct conflict with the demand.
Yeah, this is because of the mistrust, and such mistrust can be say clarified by the army or the Assam Rifles, which Assam Rifle or Army PR would have taken little proactive actions towards clarification of certain things to clarify the mistrust developed during this episode of violence. So some sort of PR is required from army or military side. This would have done earlier, and such situation would not have arisen. However, the security forces are for the people. Though I am fully with the army and Assam Rifle, and they are securing the nation as well as they are securing the security of the people of the nation. But however, at finally, the security forces are for the people of the nation. People. So if people are not satisfied, we have to see some in-gap formulas to find out a solution where people are motivated back, and maybe if they are satisfied after some time, the forces can be redeployed. As of now, the Meitei community is asking for replacement of Assam Rifle since they have lost certain
Okay. I'll go to Professor Prasenjit Biswas and then I'll come to you, Mr. Chakma. Professor, you heard Group Captain B. Nandakumar Sharma as well as the statement which has been made by Manipur Congress chief. It's somehow they feel that if the ethnicity of one section of crowd doesn't feel comfortable with a central force, they should be sent back. And it is party agnostic. I mean, it's both BJP and the Congress who belong to one particular community feel that Assam Rifle should be sent back to the barracks. How feasible this is?
Now, if I take this argument that they have to be sent back to the barracks, means that wherever they have created buffer zones, those zones have to be left unprotected. A totally absurd proposition. Assam Rifles may go mistaken.
No, they're saying that it can be replaced by other forces, other central paramilitary forces.
In between, what will happen? Who will manage the security? It's all arbitrary talk. If a force is mistaken on a certain matter, if laws are violated by the force, there are ways to mitigate that. Those constitutional mechanism needs to be invoked, and not this kind of a subjective preference of one force and the other, because the situation is so difficult, so pliable, so vulnerable. At this point, any shuffling that opens up a little chance of insecurity should not be taken up at all. So this kind of propositions are actually, I don't know, this marks a certain sense of frustration, a sense of fatigue, a sense of even non-understanding the intricacies of security matter. So I think that Assam Rifles, being the sentinels of the Northeast for more than 100 years, they should be in place. If there is any violation of human rights by them, that has to be highlighted. It's not a blanket statement against this sector or that sector of forces that is needed at this moment. What is rather needed is a more holistic understanding and a more committed understanding to peace with justice. And that requires forces to be placed in its place. An in-betweenness has to be maintained. A buffer zone has to be maintained. The barricades that are laid by the forts are to be maintained. Across the barricade, one fort should not be shooting at the other forts. So this is not what is at all desirable at this point of time. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chakma?
So I think there are a couple of issues which we are not comfortable to talk about it, but those are the underlying factors. One of the factors is that though there is a conflict between or clash between the Meiteis and the Kukis, there is an element of counterinsurgency, and that counterinsurgency has to do with the Indian security forces trying to secure the border, and of course the movement of the Meitei insurgent groups. Meitei insurgent groups cannot cross over to Myanmar, which is their main base, without crossing over to Naga territories or the Kuki territories. And of course, the security forces, whether it's the Indian Army or the Assam Rifles or anybody who is posted there, they have that particular element in mind, because none of the Meitei armed groups are in talks with the government of India, despite the detention or arrest, or at this moment house arrest of Megan from the UNLF for over a decade. So that insurgency is alive, and the central security forces, in the context of the Manipur or Meitei sentiments, I was the other day talking with somebody else. I mean, it's almost dangerous to talk all those things on television. So there is an element of that insurgency, counter-insurgency, nationalism, sub-nationalism. It's just the same way we always talk about how this riot started. This riot started as if over land, over territories, etc. No. One of the key reasons why the riots started is because of the conflict over drug money by the political leaders from both communities, police officers, or the lots of law enforcement officials. One of the root causes for start of this riot is a dispute over the drug money, and drug is a reality, but it's not only one particular community. There are certain sections or certain people from all communities, and and people who are in position of power or holding official position, they are also responsible. But because we don't want to be dragged in court or to be prosecuted for speaking the truth, which we can establish by evidence, we don't want to talk about it. So the reaction to the Assam Rifles, please remember, has a lot to do. Of course, Assam Rifles own a strategy with respect to insurgency and counterinsurgency in the state, and the feeling of the Meiteis. So, but these are issues we don't want to talk about it. Okay. Nothing which can be established. But I would say, these are the realities. And the last point on the Congress, president speaking about it. I don't think in both sides there are any political parties. I don't think religion also is a factor. What is a factor is the ethnicity. So if you belong to a particular ethnicity, if you're relying on the votes, you would speak exactly this language. Okay. That's what it is.
Okay. And today the Manipur police has held a press conference, and it's been more than 4 months since violence hit the state. And today the police gave a detailed list of the damage caused by violence since May 3rd. As many as 175 people have been killed, 32 more are missing, and more than 1,108 plus have been injured. 96 bodies are still lying unclaimed in hospital mortuaries. Altogether, 4,786 houses were set on fire and 386 religious structures vandalized, which has more than 200 plus churches and 132 temples.
BrahMos, stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's Navy has threatened